I'm going to first of all, I'll show you this project that I did just so you can kind of understand what a good workflow looks like. I do what's called a procedural workflow. So that way, like I was telling you in the van, you can go to any point, and after adding all these effects, I can change this logo to text, or you could even do video or whatever you wanted to do with this animation. You'll also notice that in my project panel, like I've got 5 things here at the beginning, and obviously this has a whole lot of layers going into it. So staying organized is really helpful, and this is also the way that I set it up is with all of my what's it called? All my layers and everything is labeled, so that way I could send this project file to someone else and they'd be able to open it, and you don't have like comp 1, comp 2, like, you know, shape layer 2, whatever, all this different stuff. Everything's labeled so you can instantly know what it is. So I'm going to show you kind of what I did, and then we'll just open up a new project, and then hopefully I'll be able to give you some of the tools to be able to take that vision that you have that you want to do the effect with the van, and be able to put that on there. So I won't actually be doing like a full like render with all the effects completely laid out, but I'll give you some options and some different things that I have in mind that you might be able to use. So first of all, I always title my first composition render comp. This was actually kind of an old one. I usually title it 00, so that way it's at the top. And then from my render comp, I do what's called my, where is it? The edit progression comps. So I've kind of updated the way that I label things, and I'll go over that. But you'll notice like we've just got these different fields here. So I've got like logo, right? Because that's what I'm animating. And then O1, O2, and then the description. So you want to have all 3 of those fields, so that way everything will be in order, but also labeled properly. So now I can go to like the beginning right there, and I can see how everything started. So it started with this, just a handful of layers, and then just progresses to all these different things that I added. You can see as I'm clicking through here. And the great thing is too, if you're like, you know, by the time you get to the end of this, if you're like, well, I don't really like that that mirror effect at the bottom, which comes in, yeah, like right there, then you could just go before you added that in. So it's like we got borders and reflect. So let's just go to the comp before that. That's going to be everything that happened before we added that mirror effect. Or you could even, if you wanted the stuff after it, now all we have to do is just, let's see, we go inside of that composition and we just get rid of that mirror effect, which came in somewhere. However I ended up doing it. But you know what I'm saying, just a little bit of playing around, especially if it's a fairly recent comp. I mean, this composition was made, I don't know, like 6 months ago or something like that. So there's that. And then another thing that I do with pretty much all of my assets, even if I don't know whether or not, like if I'm pretty sure that I'm set on it, I'm still going to use like an asset and storage composition folder. So like there's my logo storage comp, which is just my logo. And so now I can replace this with whatever I want. So let's just check that off, and Command T, open up text. You just type in text. We'll center it real quick. And then we go back over to the render composition, and now boom, everything updates. Looks like trash right now, so you know you might have to update it because it's not going to be some of the effects were kind of directed towards a bigger platform, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm going to show you how to create something like this. So we'll go to new project, and I'm going to go pretty in depth, just explaining everything that I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Actually, no, I don't want to save this. New project. Okay, solid. So new composition. I titled the first one, we go 00 underscore render 00. So first field is, since everything in the project panel, you can have it organized differently. I just do by alphabetical and numerical order. So you do 00. That is your position over here. doesn't actually matter. I just like to have the render at the top, and then I like to have my process composition underneath it. So when I do my process, I would just change the field to O1. And then you do the description of what this composition is. So this is the render comp. Usually, 9 times out of 10, you can think of it like building a pyramid upside down. So you start with that one piece at the top, and then everything branches out after that. So usually that first one, that first composition that you make is the one that you're eventually going to render out. And then 0, 0. So that's kind of like the version. Usually I'm not going to have not going to have multiple versions of render, but if I did, then I could just change that to O1, and then I would add another description after that. So like, let's say I had like a fire reveal, and then you just change it to, fire reveal for the that next version. The other thing is I'm using the underscores. The underscores are to separate the fields, so that way, like if I got rid of all these spaces, it would not be, or all the underscores and replace them with spaces. It's not super obvious where the different fields are. Like, is fire and reveal, are they a different field, or is that just part, like 2 words within the same field, if that makes sense? So that's why I have it labeled out like that. Okay, preset. You can create some of your own custom presets if you want. I have a few of those, but I'll just walk through each of these. That's your resolution. So we're just going to do the classic 1920 1080. Square pixels. This one's weird. I've never found a reason to change the pixel aspect ratio, but essentially square pixels, that's a 1-to-1 ratio. But you can see over here, if I were to change it to like this widescreen, it would now be a 2.15 to 1. So it's not changing the resolution, but it's changing the actual like shape of each individual pixel. So in this case, you would have a rectangular pixel instead of a square pixel. Most of the time you run into issues with that, especially if you're doing any kind of painting or anything with a brush. Also, rotoscoping can have some issues with that, so I don't really know what the reason for that is. And then most of the time I'm going to be doing 30 frames per second, even if I'm going to do my final export at 24 or 23.976. Reason being, whenever you're creating a whole lot of keyframes, it's a whole lot easier just to do the math. If it's, I want to scrub the timeline 1 second, all I have to do is go forward 30 frames instead of 24, or if it's 2 seconds, it's like 48. You start getting to multiples with like 12s. That's annoying. So I do 30. Also, it gives you some opportunity if you want to do like some like 80% slow-mo to get that buttery footage. It gives you the opportunity to be able to do that. Resolution doesn't matter. I believe, I never change it, I always keep it on full, but I believe that that's just like your preview resolution, so it doesn't really matter. Start time code also does not matter. And then duration, I usually just set that to like 1 minute. All of this can be changed at any point. This exact screen, the composition settings, can be changed at any point, so don't feel like set. If you're like, oh no, I didn't make it long enough. But you actually can run into more issues down the road if you're doing, you're like 6 pre-comps deep into your footage, and like the first one can only extend out to like 15 seconds, and maybe you need it to be longer. Having it, I always would rather have a much longer timeline than shorter. Background color, that should almost always be black. So even if I change this to like this green color, if the background is still going to be transparent on an export. So if I were to just put like a text layer on a transparent background, when I export it, it's not going to be green, it's going to be black. So I just keep it black. If I want a different background, I just add a solid. So hit OK, and now we're here. So we got our render comp. Because I have a pretty standard and consistent workflow, I go ahead and create folders. So you can do this too. This will kind of help you. Do O1 process. Let's keep it like that. So my process comp is like the main composition, and then if I take that entire main composition and maybe it's like 20 layers and I want to just pre-comp it, then I would pre-comp it and I would call it like process O1 and then if I pre-comp that one, process O2, and all of those lead up to that final render comp right there. So you always want to have a process. We're going to create a asset bin. Looks like it put that inside, so we're going to take that out of our process comp. Okay. We'll just start with those two so that we're not getting too cluttered. All right, so you are obviously going to be having some footage, but I have, what did I do? Put it somewhere, van. Okay, oh yeah, that's the other thing. Whenever, which I don't know if it's like this in Final Cut or not, but whenever if you want to send this project file to somebody else, like let's say I had this, this van PDF that I have here, and I had it in downloads, and then I'm like, okay, well I want to send this. So you put all your footage, whatever you have, inside of a folder with your project file, and then you email it out. Since it changed locations in your on your desktop, it's going to unlink from the composition. Now it should relink, since whenever you're sending it over, it's only going to reference things inside of that folder, but it can cause some complications. So I always just like to start everything out from the beginning organized. So if I wanted to, in this case, I'm calling this project van. So like I have my project files in here, I have my VFX assets, everything. And so whenever I'm ready to email this to someone, I just drag and drop and everything's in the same place. It doesn't have to move. I'm not going to be worrying about that for this because this is just kind of a tutorial. So, but that's something that I would recommend that you do. Okay, so we got our van. This is where I would probably put this in. We just create a new folder, call it footage. Throw that in there. Okay. Drag it onto our timeline. The next thing we're going to need, or I'm going to need in this case, is I'm going to need something for the van to like turn into. In your case, you'll take your blank footage or your van that doesn't have a wrap, and then your footage of the van with the wrap. In my case, I'm not going to do that. So I think I've got the old logo here. Job tells me every single time I use it. He's like, hey man, update the logo. I'm like, oh yeah. So this is where I put it in my asset bin. Now, what I'm actually going to do here is now I'm going to create, sorry, not a new folder. I'm going to create a new composition. So we're going to do Command N, create a new composition, and we're going to call it logo 00 bin. I call it a bin because I'm basically just holding my logo inside of it. So then, let's see. Well, actually, yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that folder for bins, and then we'll just do assets, and then we can drag that in there. So now we've got this little dealio going on. So solid. Within this composition, I'm just going to stretch this out so that way it fits perfectly. By the way, click and drag and then hold shift, and that will preserve your dimensions. So from here, a good thing to do, you don't have to do it, I just like to do it. Go ahead and hit Command K, and then what you'll be able to do, we're gonna uncheck this lock aspect ratio. I'm gonna change the height of my composition. I want to make it smaller. I want it to fit a little bit better. So that way it just fills up the whole screen. Solid. So we have something like that. Looks a little bit better. Yeah. So now all we have to do is go into our logo bin, add that on top, and solid. Now I've got this guy. And then if at any point I'm doing all my effects, I want to change the logo to something else, or in my case, a lot of times Job's like, hey, you're using the old logo. All I have to do is go in and swap it out. So we'll just leave that there and call that good. Optionally, you can throw this render into your process comps, and that'll keep things a little bit cleaner. So that will be there. Alrighty. So a lot of different options you can go into here. I'm actually just going to get rid of this because it's kind of distracting. So you can do the custom animation and do everything by hand. I like to do that sometimes, but honestly, let's go over to Action VFX here and have a look. The company should buy whatever you need, but if for some reason they won't, just find whatever you want in Action VFX and I can get it for you, because Like I said, I got all this for free. So let's just go to products here. Go to energy. Some different things. Probably like an energy burst. You could do something cool with this guy. So a lot of this stuff is gonna be like super cut and dry, like really simple. Like, yeah, let's just download this. Give me a moment. While it's doing that, we'll kind of look at something else that we can do here. I'm actually going to download another piece of footage. So we go into, let's see what we got. Oh, there it is. Somewhere in here. Is this all my products? Let's go to energy again. Actually, for example, maybe explosions. I think there's like missile or something like that. We're just gonna change it a lot so that way it doesn't look like a. Where's this at? I can't find it. Okay, well, we'll do the energy effect then. Energy burst. So yeah, let's just take. I'm just looking for like a little. Well, none of those are really going to work for what I was thinking, but it'll be pretty clear what I'm talking about here in a second. I'll worry about that a little bit later. So let's just take our little energy burst effect and see what we have here. So luckily, a lot of these assets are already keyed out. In the case of like if you had some lightning, which I downloaded a lightning one earlier. Yeah, here it is. In the case of like their lightning, or maybe whatever other assets you're using, it's not going to be there, or it's not going to be on an alpha mat. So you probably already know this. You can do add, and then you're good. In some cases, you can't do add. Oh wow, that actually looks pretty good. So you might combine the two. In some cases, you can't do add. A lot of times, what you're going to be using is there's a few different things. Unmult in your effects is going to be really good. So it's like alpha something lightness unmult. That will completely remove all the black and kind of do essentially the same thing, which is really nice. There's some cases where you need to use unmult as opposed to using the add, because maybe you want to do like a darken or something like that, but then also have your unmult. So that's why that's an option. The other that is going to be a little bit more, you'll have some more options with what you're doing. It's not just like straight remove black. You can take extract under the keying section and apply that to your footage. And now we'll just extend this so I can see all of it. Now you can basically just start removing, this will drag for me. It's gonna work. There we go. You can start removing the black like that. And you can fine tune some things, adjust the softness. So that's going to be useful in some other cases as well. Again, depending on what kind of footage you're working with. So we'll get rid of that. I'm going to hide the lightning. I'm actually not even going to work with the lightning at all right now. So what I'm going to do is check this little guy and then this guy here. So that just hides it. And then whenever I want to see it again, I can just push that. So that's what that does. So this is, a little energy effect. It's going to blow across. I'm actually going to, first of all, let's title it better. Again, every time you bring something, I'm not going to do this for the sake of time, but every time you bring something in, you're going to want to put it inside of like a folder. You're going to want to name it. Even with like your energy assets, I would recommend throwing that in a bin. I did that with something for Job, one project I was working on. I had a lightning effect. He had some better lightning effects. And so he was like, yeah, I actually just want to change the lightning. And all he had to do was go into the asset bin, swap out the lightning and make sure everything lined up the way I had it in that composition. And then boom, everything auto updated. He didn't have to fine tune anything. So again, if you were like, I have a different energy burst effect that I want to apply, then you'll be able to do that. So always be thinking ahead. Always, again, it's just a procedural workflow. One thing affects another thing that affects another thing. And it all just kind of fits together and works automatically. So with this energy effect, let's say I want it to blow the other way. Pretty simple way to do that. We're going to hit S with that layer selected. Uncheck the uniform scale option. And then that's your X, that's your Y value. You're just gonna take that, turn it to -100, and then it'll like flip it to where now it's going the other way. So that's a pretty quick and easy way to do it. I'm gonna recheck this by the way. Vice versa, if you wanted to flip it vertically, you would just flip it, do -100% on the Y axis. So yeah, now we got something like this, and then it's like, okay, but you can definitely tell that that's just like layered on top. So one thing that we can do to make it feel like this is a part of our scene is we'll add a displacement map. Now, if you're working with multiple different layers and you want this displacement map to affect all of them, I would recommend creating a new adjustment layer. So all you have to do is right click in this blank space over here, new adjustment layer. If you have so many layers in here that you can't access your, like this blank area, you can just go up to layer, new, and then adjustment layer. Or that's also, it'll show you the, you can do, what is that, option command Y. I never remember that. So we got that adjustment layer on top. Let's actually put it below the energy layer. And then we're gonna add a displacement map. So the displacement map is going to start distorting or displacing the pixels based off of data from another layer. So we're gonna take the data from our energy effect. Always check effects and most 9 times out of 10 it checked effects and masks. So whatever you change on your energy layer will be changed with the displacement as well. Most of the time I'm gonna switch between luminance and alpha for like how it's translating the data. You just kind of see which one works best for you. So we're gonna uncheck this energy, and then we're gonna start bumping this up to see how it's affecting it. So this is where we're kind of running into a weird issue here, where it's taking the, you can kind of see what's going on. It's like taking the data before we flipped it. So honestly, I'm not even sure exactly why it's doing that. A lot of times in After Effects, you just don't know, but you do know how to fix it, and the way to fix it is to create a pre-comp. So you just pre-compose this, and honestly, if you already had put it inside of a bin, and like your energy blast bin, then you wouldn't have this issue because you'd align it in the bin however you wanted it. So we'll just comp it. So whenever you're doing pre-comps, you have these two options here: leave all attributes or move all attributes. Most of the time you're going to want to check move all attributes. This is going to take any effects that you put on top of this layer, and it's going to keep them tied to that layer, so that way whenever it pre-composes, it's not going to be on top of that. So for instance, let's just say I put like a displacement map on top of this guy. Okay, so that's an effect. And then we pre-compose, and I have leave all attributes. I hit OK. Notice how that effect is just on top of the composition and not on top of that layer. So we don't want that. So then we would pre-compose, move all attributes, and now if I go into the energy comp and I check on that layer, it's still on that layer. So we're gonna get rid of that. Now, once you start opening compositions, it can be kind of easy to get lost. I mean, obviously you can go to your project and you can like kind of look through here, but one really great tool is you just hit the tab key, maybe, check inside your comp area, tab key, and it's now going to show you what compositions are tied to the current one that you're in. So that'll help bring you back to where you need to be. And then these are kind of your hotkeys that'll pop up. You can delete those as you open new compositions. Okay, so adjustment layer. Let's go to the effects up here. Also, if this isn't big enough, you can 2-finger scroll on your trackpad to kind of switch between them. So we're going to do the displacement based off the energy comp 1. Let's have a look here, and now you can see we're getting some of that displacement that we wanted, which is awesome. So it's not going to make like a huge difference, especially if that is checked on. It's going to be mostly hidden, but if you want it to be like more noticeable, pretty easy thing to do. We're just going to copy this energy comp, and we're going to call this one energy, like energy mat, or we'll call it a map. And then change the color so that way, I usually do like non, so that way you can have it, you know, organized and different. Take your adjustment layer. Also, title your adjustment layers. Again, I'm not doing a lot of this because I'm trying to save time. We're already at 25 minutes, but you will do it. You will do a better job. So we're going to change to energy map, which it actually already did, which is solid. We're going to turn it off so that way we can't see it. We're just mapping the data. And then let's kind of make it come. Let's see. Push plus on your keyboard to zoom in, and then Command Shift and arrow keys will move 10 frames at a time. Command and arrow key will move 1 frame at a time. So we're going to start at the beginning. Let's just say we'll go 10 frames forward. And then I'm going to move the actual energy wave, not the map that we're using, but the actual visual, over to 10 frames later than the map. So you can hit open bracket, and that will move it. Optionally, you could do option open bracket, and that will trim it to that point in your timeline. We don't want to trim, we just want to move it, so we'll do that. And so then we kind of have this little latency thing where it gets ahead. So you could do something like that if you wanted to. Obviously, you'd want to play around with it because it's like, okay, well, we don't see any of the blue, but like that's there. So you could potentially, like, let's say we could just have it fade in so that way it's not quite as harsh. Or another option is we could do some time remapping. So let's, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the energy map, right click, we'll go to time, enable time remapping. So we've got these keyframes. So this is the start and this is the end. And if I move this end keyframe closer, that means that it's going to speed up the timeline, or speed up the footage to where it will end wherever you have it. So let's say I just wanted it to end 10 keyframes sooner. So that'll be a little bit more subtle. We should get, yeah, you kind of have that little shockwave effect. So that's cool. I like that. Let's keep that. I mean, obviously, fine tune it. You can make it look a lot better. So now we've got something like that. Let's talk about bringing on the, that's lightning. Let's put the logo. So we'll go to our asset bin, logo. Let's throw this guy in there. So how do you want the new van to appear? Because you have this really cool energy effect that's going across. You can't just fade in or just do a simple mask to have this logo come onto the van. So what we want to do is we're going to use this map that we created a second ago, and we're going to turn it into a map. So we're going to see energy map. Solid. So now the logo, or in your case, like the new wrap, is only going to appear in the areas where there's some kind of luminance or alpha from whatever we're mapping it to. In this case, it's that energy blast. So you do something like that, this is actually already looking a lot sicker than I thought, and I was just kind of messing around here. Let's just play it. Let's see. Oh, that's cool. I like that. Okay, so obviously now it's fading away at the end. So then in that case, you would just duplicate. I kind of forgot to mention, hopefully you've figured it out by now. Command D will duplicate your footage. So then we'll take this guy. We're going to get rid of the matte, and we're just going to do like a simple, you can push T with that layer selected, so you can pull up your transparency or opacity. And we'll just knock that down to 0, and then we'll have it like, start fading in. So this is an option. It's probably not going to look super great if I'm going to be honest. I'll show you something better here in a second. Oh wow, yeah, that definitely did not work. So yeah, what you would actually want to do is we're going to create a mask. So let's see here. We're going to do 100%. Okay, so let's start like right here, and then grab your pen tool. You can click it up there, or you can hit G on your keyboard, If you hit G again with the pen tool selected, this will pull up a feather. That allows you to feather specific parts of your mask. Just hit G again to get out of that. So let's just kind of create like a little dealio like this guy. Okay, now we got our mask. Sick. We're gonna just go click on where we have that layer that has the mask. Double tap M, and that's going to pull up all of your mask properties. We're gonna check the mask path, and then Command Shift. We're gonna go 10 frames forward, and then hit the V key. To change your mask, you're gonna hit Shift and click on one of these points. So that's gonna unselect it because you noticed all of them were selected. And now if I click it again, then it's just that one selected, which is what we want. So we're just gonna bring this guy forward a little bit. Do Command Shift arrow. Again, bringing this guy forward. We're gonna stretch this guy out. Yeah, just making it like not super uniform. Feels a little bit more organic. Make sure we have everything in there. Okay. So now we're getting a little bit closer to what we want. This is already looking sick. And so this is why we did the adjustment layer, by the way, for our displacement. So now that displacement is happening to that logo that we just added. So that's why that's a thing. I'm gonna go ahead and bump up the feather a little bit. Actually, first let's go back here, click on our path, shift click a point, and then click it again. We'll bring this guy back a little bit. Let's go back another 10. Go back to the beginning here. And I don't want it coming in just yet. So, see, it's kind of coming in a little early. So probably what we'll do in this case, first of all, we're definitely gonna feather. So let's just see if we bump the feather up a little bit, which I believe is going to extend outward. Yeah, extends it outward. It's gonna be a little bit smoother. Let's go to push T, go to our opacity, and now we'll kind of do what we were doing a second ago, where it's not gonna be fully clear till like, let's say right here. And then you can push J or K, and that's gonna move between keyframes that are currently open. And we'll bump this guy down to 0. Also, a really helpful shortcut, with a layer selected, you can hit the U key, and that's gonna pull up all values that are currently keyframed. So that's really helpful. And then from there, J and K are gonna help you quickly move between your different keyframes. So let's see how this looks so far. Solid. Now, this is moving pretty quickly. So obviously, you can make all this. You can time it however you want to. You could time each individual layer, or if it's applicable, you can just pre-comp this whole thing. And this is where, so we're in our main composition, or the render composition. So we're gonna call this O1. Actually, no, we're just gonna call it process, because the 00 field will put it to the top of our folder anyways. We'll call it process O1, and then you put like what you did. So energy blast slash, would it be like transition basically? So move all attributes, adjust composition, don't need to worry about that. Open composition just opens it. I don't know, most of the time you don't do that. Most of the time, these two things should be checked. When in doubt, check those two things. Okay, and now we can right click, go to your enable time remapping. And now we'll zoom out a little bit. And again, it's like, let's make this a little bit faster. So I have this set out for a whole minute. Obviously nothing's happening for like most of that time, like 55 seconds of that time. So I don't want to try to guess like where I should move this to speed up or slow it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the point where like all this ends. So like right using command and arrow keys to scrub. So right there's when it's gone. We're going to create a new keyframe, and then I've got this 3 seconds of footage. Let's say I want it to extend like 5 seconds. Now we just move this guy here. Also, when you're moving on your timeline, your keyframe, you can hold shift and it's going to start snapping to different spots. So now let's see what this looks like. Moving kind of slow. That's okay. Oh, you know what? One thing I didn't even check. Let's see what our preview's at. Interesting. Okay. So this is probably why it feels so fast. I was going to say that doesn't feel like 3 seconds. Your preview needs to match your composition. So if we go to Command K, I'm at 30 frames per second, but my preview rate is 60. So let's change that to 30, and it's skipping every frame. So we're going to move that to 0. And let's see here. Also, we've got these 2 different resolution buttons. The resolution on your preview is how clear the preview is when you actually press play. This is just still images. So you could like change it to quarter for a still image, and then when you play it, it's clear. You'd want to do the opposite most of the time. You'd want a clear still image and then a quicker preview, but let's see how this looks. So yeah, now you have something like that. And this is how time remapping is like super powerful. Now this is great too, because what we can do is if I select these keyframes, I can either right click, go to keyframe assistant, ease in and ease out, or easy ease. But what I usually do is I just select both of them. You push F in, F9, and now it's gonna ease it in. So it's gonna create like a speed ramp essentially for you know how quickly it's moving. And then from here you can adjust the curves in your graph editor. So you just click this little button, and it's gonna show you we've got these 2 keyframes here. So now I could make it like maybe I wanted it to be really slow at the beginning, so you can see there's not a whole lot of change happening here, and then it's gonna like end super fast. But actually probably what you'd want to do is you'd want it to be pretty quick initial blast and then have it slow down over time. So let's see what that looks like. Let's see. By the time it gets to like right here is really when I want it to start slowing down. So we're going to drop this guy a little bit. Still make it pretty smooth. Yeah, so let's see. So it's going to push through that first part pretty quickly. Solid. And so then, from there we can add in different things. We can add in, if we go back in this, if you end up in a situation like this where it gets super big, push the, is it a tilde? The top left of your keyboard, it's that little squiggly thing. Just push that to the left of the 1 key. That with a certain area selected, if you tap it, will make that the full screen. So sometimes you accidentally do that. Yeah, so let's go into here. Let's turn on our lightning. We're gonna unmult. And then I want the lightning going the other way, so go into scale, -100, recheck that. I'm also gonna turn it off from being a hidden layer. And now you got some lightning, and yeah, you could start adding some of those different assets in. And really the key with After Effects and adding these VFX assets from, well, I got out of the website, but the VFX assets from Action VFX or whatever you're using, the key is having those interact with your actual footage. So whether that is to do like a 3D camera track, which I actually already have a tutorial uploaded on YouTube about how to do the 3D camera track, but as the camera's moving, the asset is moving within the scene. Whatever it is, it just needs to, or doing displacement maps, or doing a a matte where the logo comes on to the screen based on the energy blast that was on the screen. Whatever it is, it all needs to again, it's like that procedural workflow. It needs to make sense. One thing needs to affect another thing, and it needs to kind of create like a chain reaction, if that makes sense. So now the tricky part, which I would love to, whenever you're thinking about doing it, I would love to talk about how you get the footage to line up perfectly, because that's gonna be a challenge. In my head, I think probably the best move is gonna be get like, I mean, maybe do both, but get a still image of the unwrapped van, and measure from the ground, how high is my camera, figure out the angle, put it on a tripod, get everything perfectly duplicatable. How far away am I from the van? So that way you can get as close to, without error, the same angle. And I would get, some footage of that. But what I think you'll probably end up doing is you'll probably get just a still image of the van, and then you'll get your footage of the van, and you're probably gonna just rotoscope or mask out just the van so you don't have the background. You'd basically paste that onto the footage of the wrapped van, and then you could motion track it. So that would allow you to do handheld with your with the footage of the wrapped van, and handheld, just adding that little bit of perspective change from your hand slightly moving up and down. That's going to make everything feel real and believable, especially when you motion track that all those effects into your scene. It's going to make everything feel organic and like it's actually there. So I hope this was helpful. Hopefully it made sense. I know it's pretty in depth, but this is just some of the little things that you can do in After Effects. Oh, also, then I'd recommend, you would export it into Adobe Media Encoder. It's a lot simpler than trying to export it any other way. And then you do your classic H.264 or whatever. But yeah, hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please call. My favorite thing in the world to do is talk about After Effects or video in general with people that understand video.